So Sancho, it seems that about a year ago we were having mocks at this time. Do you remember that?
I remember that very well. It was very interesting time of my life, I have to tell you. And I found all the mocks very helpful, very interesting, and they were great. I mean, regardless, whoever was running the mock, be yourself, be Roman, were very helpful and very interesting, and they were very valuable. The situations mock were like kind of difficult, much more difficult, I have to say, than in the exam. That is my personal impression. Yeah, I think that the standard was higher than in the exam. That is very good because you put us up to the test, which is really good. And then when you go to the exam, and you see that the character that the assessors play are not that difficult, then this gives you a great level of confidence.
Yes, and maybe you were prepared already. You knew what to expect, and that gave you a certain advantage, maybe, right?
Yes.
Maybe that was also a factor. Thank you, Sancho. Now, you have mentioned something about your work. Do you think you can offer us a little bit more context? What is your field of responsibility, and what is it that you actually do in your day-to-day practice?
Sure, yes. I work at an international bank, Citibank. I work in the legal department, and I've been working here for the last 23 years. So before that, I worked in a US law firm, Baker & McKenzie, the office here in Madrid. And before that, I lived in New York, and I worked there for a couple of law firms, a Spanish law firm, Uria Menendez, and also a US law firm, Meyer Brown, which is very well known. It is a Chicago-based law firm, but I work in the New York office. And at Citi, my job now is I'm a product lawyer. It is something very particular for Citi because Citi is such a big bank, no? And in Citi you can have the different country councils, people working for the different business units. And in my case, I'm a product lawyer of a very good product, I have to say, of Citi, which is the credit cards. And I handle the affairs of the credit card business in an international scope, particularly focusing in Asia Pacific and also some countries of EMEA. So I have to manage, the legal affairs concerning the implementation of different regional initiatives across this region. And this region is very big, I have to say, because we cover 16 markets across Asia and also EMEA. And I have to liaise with many local councils in all these markets. So for me, it is very important. I mean, being a solicitor, it's a very good asset for me because, when you have to deal with the different lawyers in the different jurisdictions, particularly those jurisdictions in Asia Pacific that are based on English law. And that's why it is particularly important for me. Because, for instance, if you take a look at the law in Singapore, it's very similar to the English law. Also Malaysia, Hong Kong, Australia, many jurisdictions. And when we are, for instance, reviewing, a complex agreement with a payment network, for instance, MasterCard, Visa, this type of common law agreements, right? Then you encounter, very complex clauses, like, for instance, the limitation of liability, damages, indemnity, this kind of stuff, no? So for me, because I'm a Spanish qualified lawyer, no? But the Spanish legal system is very different to the English law system because we are based on Roman law and then the French law from Napoleon, no? And the system is totally different. And for me, being able to understand these common law agreements is key because when I'm discussing an agreement being governed by Singaporean law, and when we touch the limitation of liability, for instance, I know what they are talking about. Right.
So it's not just a certificate that you are after, but you obtained valuable knowledge. Is that what you are trying to say, right?
Absolutely. It's not just the title, it's the knowledge.
Yeah, but in addition to all the tutors who worked with you, Sancho, there was a lot of independent work involved. And I would like to ask you about that. You know that our methodology, our approach to training OSCE or SQE candidates is self-paced learning. It's not coercive teaching. I mean, we do not impose a standard curriculum with fixed time frames for doing mocks, or we do not establish the order of practice areas or the order of assessments to be selected for your mock practice. So instead, we put a candidate in touch with the tutor, and the tutor provides guidance, as you remember, and identifies the candidate's weak points. But at the same time, it gives each candidate the freedom to choose their own learning pathways all by themselves. So my question is whether you feel that this methodology, when you direct your own learning, has been effective for you, or would you rather have a more controlled study program? Do you feel that it was good for you, this approach?
Well, for me, it was fantastic, I have to tell you, because being able to study at my own pace, I think is something absolutely great. Because, you know, in my case, my personal profile is kind of difficult for this because I'm a family man. I have 4 children.
Yes, yes, I remember you as a family man. Yeah.
Right. Well, 4 children, and now I have a dog. So can you imagine, no? And also, I have a very challenging job. I have a full-time job, and for me, being able to study at my own pace is crucial, is key. And for me, it worked out very, very well. Very, very
Mhm.
well. And also, one important factor is the pandemic. The pandemic, I think, was beneficial, very beneficial for me in a sense that, you know, I could manage my own time much more efficiently. And that's
Mhm.
very, very important, no? I'm a very morning person because I work in international affairs, particularly dealing with Asia. So I have to get up very, very early in the morning. So what I used to do is I first thing in the morning, I did, you know, my pendings and, you know, my conference calls and whatever with my team and my colleagues in the bank. I work for an international bank. And then around noon or so, I used to go to the gym, and then in the gym, while I was working out, then I was listening to the videos of OSCEsmart. And then, you know, and this lasted for an hour or so, an hour and a half. And then um, in the afternoon or in the evening, then I used to study a lot and I used to go over the different materials and all that. You know, and for me, that was key because, you know, you have to be very disciplined because otherwise it's going to be impossible. It depends, I guess, on the different profile of the people, no? But for my particular profile, having a challenging full-time job and, you know, with my, you know, family situation, I think it was the perfect match, the perfect choice.
Yeah.
So I really prefer this.
I'm happy to hear that, really, yes. But then what about outside of the OSCE context? Do you think that your cognitive abilities and maybe your professional skills improved due to studying with us based on our methodology? Do you think that you are better at certain things now, even outside of the OSCE context, outside of that?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The materials provided by OSCEsmart were very good. Particularly, I remember, you know, some decks about, you know, drafting tips, how to structure an interview, for instance, how to structure a client presentation, not to talk about the advocacy, which are perfect materials, very, very, very valuable for me. And I have to admit that I put these materials and the things that I learned as a result of going over these materials in practice very often in my day-to-day job. And that's very good. You gain a lot of confidence in yourself because, you know, for me, I think it is crucial. In my view, it's very, very important to be able to articulate the law. And to articulate the law, well, first you need to know the substance, no, the subject matter and all that. But then you need to be able to articulate that very clearly. And I think that the approach of OSCEsmart is very good for that because it provides you a very structured way to approach, for instance, client presentations or interviews, and also, the different drafting tips and all that. I think these materials have proved to be very, very useful for me in my day-to-day job. I have to say that. As a lawyer, I have to participate in many conference calls with my colleagues because we have different business initiatives that have to land in the different markets. And for that, it is key to have a good interaction with the different lawyers in the different jurisdictions. And this type of activity, I mean, learning at OSCE is very good for that because it gives you very good capabilities. It gives you very good skills to be able to handle different conference calls, to do client presentations. I also attend several committees, and your committees, in this type of committees, you have to be able to present effectively. For instance, the litigation proceedings in the different countries in the region, Asia Pacific and EMEA, and I have to do a client presentation to very senior people at Citi. And therefore, being able to communicate effectively, clearly, and being able to articulate the law and the substance of the matters is key. And these 2 years that I've been training with OSCEsmart have given me this capability and these skills. I really feel it.
And then, Sancho, which resources you find most valuable? Because you are saying that you have picked up valuable knowledge and valuable skills, right? And it's been for 2 years that you've been studying. So what do you feel was most valuable resource or a few resources that you really benefited from?
Well, the decks are very useful. You're talking about OSCEsmart's tools,
well,
right?
Just not only OSCEsmart, but if there's an array of resources that you've been using, then yes, what do you think was most valuable?
Well, the database was very useful. LexisNexis was very, very, very useful. And also the books, I have to tell you.
Yes, reading. Yeah, that's what we also totally agree on, that reading is totally fundamental to this examination. So yes,
absolutely. You have to go over the books. Then what I did was I prepared some review notes for myself, and I think that is an advice of Olga. That is very important, very important. So the books, LexisNexis, and then the different recordings at OSCEsmart and also the decks were particularly useful for that. So everything, yeah.
What about doing mocks? Do you feel that you also somehow deepened your knowledge through mocks, or was it only helpful to develop your skills?
Yes, the mocks were very good. The interview mocks were great because, it is a big challenge for you. I have to tell you that, the mocks are probably meant to work for this type of lawyers that do have very close interaction with a client. In my case, the situation is different because I do have internal clients, because I am an internal lawyer working for a big company. So for me, in my case, my clients are my colleagues, but still, they are clients, albeit internal, but they are clients. So for me, it was very useful, these interviews, because, this gives you the opportunity to learn how to manage an interview. And in my case, sometimes I have to interview my colleagues. Like, for instance, when there is a litigation proceeding in Malaysia, and I have to engage in conversations with my fellow lawyers there in Malaysia. I mean, being able to manage an interview effectively and to, find out the information, the missing facts, as you said to me in our mocks, that is very useful. I have to say that in certain countries within the territorial scope of Citi, in some cases, you have to find out missing information because, it may happen that, the lawyers tend not to be absolutely honest, right? Not honest, no, sorry. I didn't want to say that. They are not very open. They are not very transparent. They're not very transparent. So you have to insist, and you have to be, you have to have persistence, and you have to find out what is the missing information, right? And also, very important tip is not to miss the big picture of the matter at hand. Like for instance, and that is something that I learned in the interviews, in the mock interviews, because missing the big picture has a great impact in the final result. If you miss the big picture, then the time invested in the interview is wasted.
Right.
So the same happens because when you talk to people, my work colleagues, their time is very valuable. So and sometimes it is very difficult to schedule some kind of calls to chat about the different things going on. So when you have the opportunity to spend half an hour with a colleague to understand what is the problem in any given country, it is very important to focus to find out the missing information or the missing details, being able to put together all the information that you are collecting from your colleagues, and also structure that very well. And also what is very important is to being able to take notes efficiently. That's also very important. And I learned that as a result of my mock interviews and also the tips that I found in the platform.
Right.
That is...
And Sancho, what about written mocks? What about writing and drafting and research? Do you feel that you now have better skills in these assessments, not as assessments, but just as day-to-day activities? Is it something that you do in your work? Is it helpful now that you are done with the examination?
Yes, the mocks, the drafting and writing, absolutely. Particularly the drafting. I mean, the drafting mocks were very good. And the exercises were kind of complex because, for instance, drafting the minutes of a board of directors meeting is something that is complex, right? And the mocks were very good for that. And also the writing mocks, because writing is essential for every lawyer. But in my case, I spend many hours each day writing emails, for instance, no? Because now you have these Zoom calls, but also I would say that a high part of my day-to-day job is to write emails. And in the emails, you need to be very effective and very precise because you need to be able to relay the message in a very efficient manner. Because, senior management, for instance, do not have enough time to go over long, lengthy emails. No, you have to go to the heart of the matter. And that is something that I also learned as a result of these drafting mocks. Because
so now you are implementing it and using it, applying it to real life, the skills that you have learned when preparing the examination.
Absolutely. I mean, the way that I write my emails now and I draft my contracts, because from time to time I have to draft contracts and insert comments and all that, I think it has improved significantly. No doubt about that. Significantly, because it gives you a very good idea as to what you need to do, and you need to be practical in a sense that you need to convey the message very clearly to your fellow colleagues, right? Right. Absolutely, no doubt.
And what about written assessments in the examination, Sancho? Did you feel confident? Did you have any issues with using the software, like copy pasting, for example, or typing speed? Do you feel that you met all the requirements? Were you struggling with any component of that?
I think so. I felt very comfortable in doing the writing exercises. In the research part, I think that I did very well because the recording of OSCEsmart about how to do our research is very good and very comprehensive. Because and I heard about that before engaging with OSCEsmart, because one of the advantages of OSCEsmart was that they say, well, they teach you how to write this very effectively. Hold on a second, please. Hold on a second.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Sorry about that. So what I was saying is that the research materials at OSCEsmart, and there is one video which is particularly helpful. And I went over that video, I would say 4 times, because it captured the essence very well of what is the exercise about. Very, very well. And that was key for me because when doing the research exercise, I felt very comfortable, to tell you the truth, because when I was writing, like for instance, the first question, no? Then I was doing my research, then I started, responding and writing all that, and then when the second question came along, then that was something that I've already researched during my research, right? So for me, the second question was very easy, and I managed to complete the exercise in time, and that's because of the video of OSCEsmart. That was key, I have to tell you.
All
Very,
right.
very useful.
All right. So hearing your story, it seems to me that you are quite satisfied with the choices that you made when you started the preparation, how you prepared, because it took you quite some time. You didn't come to us on the eve of the examination. It wasn't all cramming before the exam. So do you feel that you would have done something differently if you were doing this preparation for the second time? I'm happy you don't have to do it, but looking back, do you feel that you would have done something differently?
For an hypothetical second time, I don't think so. I don't think so because, for me, it worked out very well. I mean, I think that the strategy was very good. The tips that I learned from Olga were superb, I have to say, very, very useful. I mean, certain tips that I remember those very well. Like for instance, there was one tip that was brilliant. I was doing first the writing part and then the oral part after that, because particularly addressed to foreign lawyers, like my case. I mean, non-native English speakers, right? Because she said, well, you go to London, then you sit in London, and then try to do the writing part first, because then this gives you the opportunity to become familiar with, London, England, speaking in English, and all that. Then you do the writing part first, and then you do the oral part secondly. And that was a magnificent tip for me, and I follow with that. That was very, very effective. Then another tip, for instance, book a reservation in a hotel or whatever in the King's Cross area. I remember that tip very well, and I followed that. And I think it was super because, it is very important to go in time absolutely to the exam. And it just took me one subway stop, just one. That was for the oral part. And no, that was for the written part. And for the oral part, I went on foot. It was fantastic. It was fantastic because it gave me the opportunity to, to breathe fresh air, to think about the exam very relaxed, very calm, and not being stressed because of the public transportation issues, which may happen in London, right?
Good.
So these kind of tips were fantastic. I mean, many other tips.
But so it also worked on the level of logistics, right?
Right. On the level of logistics, right. But then I have to say that the other tips that I learned from the videos were absolutely magnificent. So the strategy was very thoughtful, I think, because I went over many videos, right? And I developed a strategy for myself, which was very good and fit perfectly with my personal situation, my personal and job situation, and that was fantastic, and it worked out very well. So I don't think I would have changed. I mean, it depends on luck.
No, that's good to hear. It means that you've made all the right choices. I'm just happy to hear that. Well, you don't have to think of anything negative, but I'm happy that you are quite satisfied. Now, if you were giving just a few short tips to today's candidates who are preparing to sit the SQE, SQE2 in particular, would you be able to advise anything helpful?
Yes, I would strongly advise them to do as many mocks as possible because these are very important. I think they are key. And the mocks were excellent. were excellent. And, that is the most important part. Also, I mean, obviously, you need to go over the books and you need to know the law. And that was a brilliant tip from Olga. You need to know the law, and you need to know what you need to know by heart, what you need to be aware of, and what you need to be familiar with. And that was fantastic. And also the approach of knowing the law and being able to apply the law to the facts, to the facts in question. That is absolutely key. So for me, you need to have a sound knowledge of the law. You need to go over the books, and you need to go over the decks. The decks are very practical because there is a link. The decks are very useful because they serve you to apply the knowledge acquired as a result of reading the books to the facts and to the practical matters that you are going to encounter in the exam. So the mocks are very, very, very important, very important.
Yeah, and all these components call for sufficient time, right?
Right. That was another tip. I mean, OSCE, I understand that it depends on the personal and professional profiles of the different people, but in my case, I heard one tip that say, well, look, you need to spend time in doing the OSCE, because the OSCE is a very serious exam. It's not like the MCT. The MCT is a difficult exam, but has nothing to do. And I think that the different videos gave you a very important sense about what you are going to encounter in the exam. And OSCE is a difficult exam. It is a great experience because I enjoyed that very much, very much. But it gives you a very good sense of awareness of what you are going to find in the exam. Very important. That's very important. And you need to take some time. I mean, in my case, having this full-time job and all that, I needed a couple of years. Of course, I needed that. A couple of years, and I'm including the time I spent in studying the MCT, right? For OSCE was a year and a half probably, or a year. There might be other people that don't have this full-time job and a smaller family, of course, and they can focus, full-time in studying this. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but most candidates, based on our experience, are just like you, have a full-time job, have family commitments. So I think that we can also extrapolate this tip, this advice to SQE candidates, SQE1 and SQE2, SQE1 being a multiple choice and SQE2 being a practice-based examination. Yeah, so I totally agree with all your suggestions. Yeah, and I hope that it will work for other candidates in the SQE just as well as it has worked for you. Yes. So Sancho, thank you so much. We are honored to be working with you, to have been working with you, such a successful professional. And I'm happy to see you restored back to your family.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to have this interview with you, and also having the opportunity to speaking with Olga, because I was so familiar with Olga, and for me it's been great. It's like meeting a Rolling Stone there in the street. I mean, because I'm so familiar with Olga that for me it's been absolutely fantastic. So for me it's a legend, and it's been great, absolutely great. And I felt that I had to do this because I'm so grateful to OSCEsmart and your team, because you are great people, great professionals. It is something that is a very, very good story. And I wish you, best of luck and best of success. I'm sure that you will succeed big time, because you are splendid professionals.
Thank you so much, Sancho.